financial health of the academy sector over the last 12 months has been extremely challenging. There's been no increase in funding, but increasing in staff costs, and actually what this has meant is that many trusts have had to look at restructuring, possible redundancy programmes to actually save enough money. In particular, there have been some increases in teachers' pensions and teachers' salaries, and while some of these are currently fully funded by the government, there is uncertainty going forwards. The funding landscape has been particularly challenging. An example of this is the high needs funding. Over the last 3 years, there's been a 21% increase in pupils with special educational needs. And whilst the government has given an additional £125 million to fund some of this, multi-academy trusts have actually got to work out how they're going to make ends meet.
When we looked at the financial health of the academy sector in our report last year for the 2016-17 academic year, it was a fairly depressing exercise. There were more than 50% of academies were in deficit. This year the picture is a bit brighter. It's still pretty bad, but it's a lot better than it was last year. So although trusts have been successful in cutting some costs, that's helped them to reduce the deficits, they've made all the tough decisions. There isn't anywhere easy left for them to cut costs, so without things changing, deficits will continue to be made. And what's happened this year is that trusts have bought themselves some more time, but they haven't solved the problem. When we look at the sector in detail, it's the multi-academy trusts that are less likely to be in deficit. The primaries and secondary schools within those multi-academy trusts are just as likely to be in deficit themselves, but the overall strength of the wider group suggests that model is working effectively.
As trusts expand, they should consider centralisation of their services. We've got significant evidence that multi-academy trusts which have centralised their services are financially more robust and have more monies available to spend on their pupils. Some of the advantages of centralisation of services is buying power through economies of scale, the ability to redeploy staff, standardisation of employment contracts, and also a sort of standardisation of working practices across the multi-academy trust. There are also some disadvantages in that some head teachers see the loss of autonomy as being a significant downside. However, if there are regular meetings between the head teachers and between the head teachers and the finance department, then that communication should enable that problem to be overcome. Overall, what we tend to find is that head teachers who have embraced centralisation find that it does actually benefit them in the long term.
Multi-academy trusts can elect to have their general annual grant, otherwise known as GAG, received in respect of the individual schools, pooled. It's then up to them to allocate that funding between the individual schools. There must, however, be a right of appeal so that any school that's dissatisfied can appeal to the MAT for a fairer allocation. In the event that that's not successful, they can then appeal to the Department of Education, who will make a final ruling. In practice, very few MATs are pooling their general annual grant. From the sample of 150 that we do, there's less than 10 have actually pooled. Though, as from experience, many are discussing the options of pooling in the future. Whether this will be the case, we will wait and see.
It's a constantly changing but really exciting time for the sector. If you'd like to find out some more detail, download a copy of the Kreston Academies Benchmark Report 2019.